Welcome back to the North American Blockchain Summit 2023. As always, we have Mark Hopkins, my partner, and we have Austin Mitchell, who is here from Synota to talk a little bit about maybe getting some cash off the sidelines for some of these unbelievable utilitarian miners.
Yeah.
Right.
You want me to go through the run through?
Yeah. Give us like the 30,000 foot view. Like what is it that Synota does? Where's it sit in the industry? It's in the mining business, right?
Yeah.
In the realm of mining.
Yeah. So it's in the realm of mining because what we do is we focus on reducing contract settlement time for energy and hosting agreements for Bitcoin miners.
Right.
And by reducing that contract settlement time, what you're doing is you're really de-risking that contract so that there is no need to put as much collateral, posting that to your energy supplier, to your hosting company. And so that's really what we're using is we're using the Lightning Network. So also part of the Bitcoin ecosystem to enable much faster transactions, greater transparency, and lower risk on all your contracts.
It's amazing. So when I heard about what you did, and it's fascinating to me because, again, these utility companies, and I call it a utility company, but let's say, Bitcoin mining company, we know they are going to use a specific amount, at least, and you can figure that out. It's math. You can see what the equipment's doing, the parameters, what the pull's going to be. But guess what? We don't get the flow for free. So fascinating. Didn't even think about that. Like, they don't want to be stuck with the bill either. So they're making you prepay that. And that is a difficult challenge for a startup or for a company that has just dropped a lot of money into capital expenditures.
Yeah. And especially with interest rates being as high as they are today, the cost of capital the way it is, if you're adding 20 to 30% on top of your initial capital outlay, and it's just cash that you have to go put in somebody else's bank, that sucks. So being able to solve that means, people really love us right now with how we're able to basically bring more liquidity. And I think the key thing is that there's a lot of people in the energy space that, either take measured approaches with how much energy they will or exposure they'll have to Bitcoin mining generally, or just aren't even in the supply landscape because of credit risk. And so being able to take credit risk completely off the table is something that will bring more liquidity to the space, more options, more producers and energy suppliers who are willing to actually serve the space.
So would you characterize yourself as, or the Synota as a payment rails provider that understands the energy sector and mining, or is there more to it than that? Is it like some secret sauce? Because I'm always curious anytime you are in the crypto space and you have to navigate on-ramps and off-ramps, like it's always been like a delicate dance with the banking industry. So where is it that you guys how do you identify internally on that spectrum of things?
It's a great question because in the typical space that we're talking about, there's payments companies, there's billing companies, that's how we have sort of grown up in energy, is thinking about all these companies we have to stack together to ultimately do what is called meter to cash.
Right.
So from reading the meter to that final cash application step at an energy company, there might be 5 different departments and 4 different softwares involved today. We do them all.
Okay.
In one solution. And it's
So
all
you're the conductor of the symphony.
Yeah, we do all those pieces. And so I'll just highlight 2 things. So number one is from a technology standpoint, we're using the Lightning Network, and what we've built is a novel way of creating smart contract-like functionality without having any of the faults of a smart contract that's built on a layer 1. So we're able to really focus on the way we talk about it is it's collaborative consensus. So the parties to the contract need to agree on the settlement terms and payments, but just them. The second thing that I'd say when we talk about who we are as a company is we are really good at knowing our customer. And part of that is being really good at accounting. And so when it comes to, if you're now taking an energy bill that was once every 30 days, and then you tell a company, hey, this is now going to come once a day, they're just like, I was about to swear, but I'm not even going to swear. There might be kids watching, but they're just like, heck no, it's not going to happen because I already know how much work it is to send one bill. Now you're going to tell me I got to send 30. But what we do is we communicate that it's a complete transformation. Because what you're doing is when you go to Starbucks, you get a coffee, you buy it, you get a receipt. With the Lightning Network, the same thing is now happening is energy is being delivered and it's being paid for and bought right away. So what they have for the energy company gets is 31 receipts. And so you don't need to actually put 31 receipts on the books. You just need that final, this is how much cash I got.
Yeah.
And you enter that in. And so it actually makes the lives of the accounting teams much easier. But this is born of really knowing our customer and knowing what it was that we could ultimately get them to buy into. It was a system that didn't require them to change anything about how they currently did it. We can de-risk those contracts without any change to their back office.
So I've been dealing with Texas for power. We're looking at bringing another 5 megawatts into a data center that I'm helping on. And they aren't very easy to work with. How do you work with those companies to tell them that, no, we want to make this more efficient? Because they tend to like push back and they like the old world. What are your, how do you do that?
Yeah. So the first thing is, you know, myself and my two co-founders, we've been in energy in the industry our whole career. We've worked in, you know, deregulated and you know, for public utilities, et cetera. So we speak the language, we know the people, we have a good network that helps.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to like, you know, how are we ultimately able to get folks sort of get the ball moving? It's kind of just where we focus. So, I mean, we're focused on you know, Bitcoin miners and other high credit risk customers. So if you are servicing that space, you are worried about, you know, the customers you consider the riskiest. And so if you can help them sleep a little easier at night, that's a good thing. And the second thing is where we're seeing now is our software is really becoming a competitive advantage to the suppliers that adopt it, because in you know, Texas and other deregulated states, they're competing to win, you know, this business of Bitcoin miners. And so if one of them comes to the table and says, you know, you, for the same power deal, you need to post $50,000 of collateral, and the other one comes and says, no, you need to post 500,000 with me. Well, who are you going to choose if the prices are pretty close?
Yeah.
So we're really, you know, finding that, you know, we can just be, you know, and give somebody a competitive advantage in the actual process. And it's starting to play out that way.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what is the origin story? Like, how did you guys come to I mean, obviously it's a problem that's existed, I think, for, I mean, in the history of mining, probably at least the last 4 years. How did you guys come to the problem? How long have you been at this?
So I'll first say, you know, we've been at this as a company. We started talking about Bitcoin mining, being in the energy industry. It got really interesting to us with the China ban, you know, mid 2021.
Right.
You know, myself and my two co-founders just started chatting, and it was observing that Bitcoin miners were changing so much about energy. They were 10 years ahead of where other people were.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that wasn't changing was how they were transacting.
Right.
And so, you know, that's sort of where you can just sort of see, okay, it's usually the right element to say there's a problem to solve there. If everything's changed, but this one thing.
Right.
But what I'll say, just, you know, for context, is that the reason the system is the way it is goes back to the day when we had people who had to walk neighborhoods and read meters. And so all of the back offices for all of the utilities were built on the expectation that you're only going to read somebody's meter once a month.
Right.
And so the mainframe computers that they still rely on were sized to only process 1/30th of the bills every day. So it's just a legacy technology thing that has stuck. What's interesting, though, is that the Department of Energy back in the early 2000s, right after they said smart grid, and everybody got excited, they dawned upon them that they said, oh, smart grid will never be smart, though, if there's not the right incentives, if people don't have real-time prices. And so the vision for our future where money and energy are flowing synchronously is actually the Department of Energy's vision going back to 2003, when they first, the term they came up with was called transactive energy. You know, they're the world's experts on what it needs to look like. They've just not found the technology to do it. And that's where we come in.
Interesting. Yeah. The only other application of this is that I've heard, and it's not an in practice, it was a theoretical system, is built by NASDAQ back in like 2017. And it was something they put out for a demo just to demonstrate that they understood what blockchain was. Mm-hmm. But it's, for many of the reasons that you described, the antiquated nature of energy systems, there's perverse incentives within the energy sector. There's no upside for them adopting this, right? It's better for them. Well, not better for them. It's just, there's no, like, it's an extra cost if they're not going to do it until they're forced to. So, yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's so much that goes into any technology change. You have to think about how that change will ultimately come to be. And for us, that's the key has been, don't change anything.
Right.
No ERP integrations, no new processes. Our system is up in the cloud, and it will do everything for you, and just the money goes straight to your bank. You can sleep better at night. So don't worry about it.
I just can't get over, with all the different technologies out there, with all of the different softwares, all the platforms, how many different ways there is to give money from your bank to whoever needs it. Blows me away.
Yeah.
You think there'd be one payment, hey, US dollar denominated world, right? But getting it from point A to point B and trusting all the way through the process has been such a challenge for everybody. And it seems like something that we should be able to keep track of. It's a metered thing, right? But it just never turns out that way.
Yeah. And, coming from energy, the thing that I, learn a lot about Bitcoin Lightning, but I've also had to learn a whole lot about, fiat payment rails and rules and regulations there. So, getting in touch at all.
I never knew as much. Everything I've learned about fiat payment rails, I've learned against my will from being a Bitcoiner.
That's exactly right.
It's really ironic. So tell me a little bit about the decision. Like, what influenced the decision to go with Lightning? Was it mostly for, compatibility with Bitcoin? I mean, because obviously it's a L2 that Bitcoiners like. Did you evaluate any other kind of smart contract capable platforms? What was the deciding factor there?
So we didn't look at any technology outside of the Bitcoin space.
Okay.
And there's a number of reasons for that. It's part sort of what we believe about Bitcoin and where it's going to be, in 10 years, but in 50 years. I mean, we're building a company that we're building an incredible company, and we want to be on using the best underlying base layer technology to support it. And then when it comes to, and also just sort of the international nature, I mean, when it comes to we're going to be getting into energy investments and things like that. These are 20-year contracts getting signed. Am I going to sign that on Solana? Hell no.
You don't know if Solana's going to be up next week.
I did swear now. Darn it. The previous one was going to be a different one, but wait a minute.
We're kind of in the non-life.
Thank you. So then when it comes to Lightning, Lightning, obviously, it borrows the properties of on-chain mainnet. So we've got security and decentralization, but being able to transfer value instantaneously for very low cost, what Lightning does, that's ultimately what we needed for our solution. And then Lightning gives that additional layer of programmability. Now there's programmability that can exist, on-chain and things like that. And there's side chains. So we're very aware of the ecosystem, but to solve exactly what we needed to do today, instant settlement makes it that receipt process.
Right.
And then the programmability gives us the ability to now integrate the financial rails with the physical world and energy moving market prices, et cetera. But what I'll say is that as a company, we're going to continue to think about how this whole space is going to evolve. I was talking with somebody earlier that said, we don't like Lightning that much as a miner because, it doesn't actually generate, it steals fees from miners. And I'm sympathetic to that because, I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say Lightning is absolutely the only way that payments will be done on Bitcoin. There may be other technologies or protocols that come up that make payments using Bitcoin easier, and we're here for it. And we've built our software to be able to interact with whatever is going to make the most sense over time.
Yeah, it tends to be problematic when you have partners that are not happy with the way that you're transacting business, when that's just like one small part of it. Is it the best? No, we'll get there, but this is the best right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And being able to build a product that actually will allow for that scaling and change.
That's right. And one thing I'll say, for folks maybe unaware of Lightning, the one thing about, we describe it internally as it's a beta protocol. Now that's just a non-software, engineer saying that, so don't act, but it's how I sort of relate to where it is in its own development life cycle. It's less than 10 years old. And so there's still things being worked out. There still are, vulnerabilities maybe, and there's issues with, payment reliability. And so what I want people to understand is that how we've approached the Lightning Network is we're doing one thing and doing it extremely well. So my background is engineering and statistics. And so the way that you reduce variability, reducing variability is always what you're trying to do whenever you're dealing with like a complex system. And so by focusing on doing one use case, energy payments, and building the infrastructure to support that one use case, we've been able to control for a lot of the things on Lightning that are still immature or, need to be improved to increase reliability. So I think it's also in just how you approach the technology. What are you trying to do with it? We're not trying to be payments anything. It is literally just one.
We're mission driven. This is our mission.
Yeah.
We're trying to make sure that we fix this gap.
And when we do that, we can be extremely secure, the most secure, and we can be 100% reliable. And that's what we deliver.
That's great. Well, I appreciate your story here. Is it actually? You know what? This is a policy focused conference. I want to offer you the opportunity that I've been asking a lot of folks that this Ted Cruz, Loomis earlier today. There's an interesting policy discussion going on. I'm trying not to be distracted by he's talking right at me. And of course, yesterday Vivek and RFK all mentioning things that affect our industry from a policy perspective. If you could align the entire industry behind a single policy initiative, what do you think is the most important to the industry? What is it that we need to settle right now? That kind of is an existential thing, I would say. Do you have anything like that in your? That's
a really great question. I think I'll probably defer towards energy, actually, if I may.
That's great. We haven't had that answer yet.
Yeah, I can